Hello and welcome to this Simulife session. My name is Mark Portelli, and I'm the digital twin lead for Accenture's Metaverse Continuum Business Group. I will be your host today to talk about the practicalities of digital twins. We're assuming our audience has a theoretical understanding of digital twins, which is why today we want to talk about how far should we take digital twins and how do we find the right equilibrium that drives real value for your business. With me today to help me answer some of these questions, I'm delighted to welcome four amazing experts. First, let's welcome Pooja.
Hi, I'm Pooja Sangvi. I'm a managing director and Accenture, part of our Metaverse Continuum Business Group.
Fantastic. Nice to meet you, Pooja.
Likewise.
Then we've got Mike.
Yeah, hi, Mark. Great to be here. Mike Geyer, part of the NVIDIA Omniverse product management team, looking after manufacturing and digital twins, and really excited for the conversation today.
Fantastic. Nice to have you, Mike. Then we've got Richard.
Hey, Mark. I'm Richard Wang. I'm a managing director at Accenture Cloud First. Great to be here today.
And last but not least, we've got Christophe.
Hi, Mike. I'm Christophe Bordeaux. I'm managing director as part of our industry X practice, and I look forward to the discussion with you guys.
Fantastic. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us today. So when I talk about digital twins, I really like to refer to them as living models. They're models because digital twins provide a simplified representation of real-world entities. And they're living because they're constantly evolving and syncing with the real world. The moment they're out of sync with the real world, they become less of living twin and more of a snapshot in time. If I go back to my operations research studies at university, I always remember my professor saying, when something could be solved with a very simple model, you shouldn't try and complicate it further than what's necessary. But here we are 50 years later, right? And we've got technologies such as cloud, 5G, AI, IoT, that are all enabling us to build these living models with so much richness, with real complexities and very high fidelity. So the obvious question is, how do we start building digital twins to solve the use cases at hand with the minimum complexities and without replicating all aspects of the real world entity? But at the same time, set up ourselves to gradually add those complexities as our digital twins mature. So to shed some light on this, I'd like to bring you in, Richard. Richard, you've had numerous clients scale digital twins across various industries. What are the common foundations that need to be considered to enable successful scaling?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's really three things to consider, and they are value-based approach to use case selection and scaling, properly sequencing the tech build-out, like what you already mentioned, and also having the right incentive structure for the stakeholders that are governing or kind of part of the program. So a little bit deep dive into the first one, right? The use case. And this is really about aligning use case and actions and outcomes to concrete value levers, whether it's, waste reduction or increased capacity or non-quality costs, all those things. Then it's really about picking the right initial use case. I mean, sometimes you can pick the right one, sometimes you get lucky, but either way it has to happen. And really that is to establish your initial momentum. So for example, you want to pick something that's, infinitely scalable, high value, potential, easy to do, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, you really want to strive for something that's relatively focused in scope, with moderate value potential and can be readily scaled in the next 10 to 15 locations, right? And then lastly, around use case, it's really about having a loop or a continuous way to generate and prioritize use cases in your backlog, so then you can keep the momentum going. The second piece of this is around the tech build. Mark, you mentioned a lot of different technologies are available, IoT, 5G, all those things, right? But as we move to scale, we're really always looking to do things better, cheaper, faster. And the way this is done is by maximizing reuse of common components, or what people would call, for example, a platform. And really maximizing return on those tech investments is about striking a balance between upfront investments to build a platform versus enabling immediate needs of a use case and doing this incrementally. So for example, one client, we had great successes on our first use case around reducing production drift online, which turned into a multi-year program across many sites and a dozen more use cases. We built out our platform based on what drives the immediate value and also a little bit on future reuse. For example, we built And we built automation to connect to plants faster. That allows us to scale the first use case to 10 other sites. And then we created edge modules to enable real-time alerts and closed-loop automation because we're looking at removing human out of the loop in some of these use cases, the next one up. Then we started looking at ways to basically allow kind of site users and operations associates to quickly onboard devices and apply analytics without intervention from IT and things like that to really proliferate the use case and data generation. And then after that, for example, we started basically looking at services and data services that helps us contextualize data faster and also on the edge due to confidentiality and things like that. Because now you have many different associates running around and kind of plugging things in and in a secure way, of course, but really generating that additional data and value. So that's kind of really a little bit on the tech build out. And then finally, I mentioned earlier, it's really around the incentive structure. So first, understanding your stakeholders and what they're measured against would be really useful. For example, in a large program, like some of these digital twin programs I've been a part of, there's typically a central program team. There's typically technology partners and then typically kind of site or location P&L owners. Usually the central program leads are incentivized by some financial or transformation objectives that they've kind of committed to get some sort of funding, right? Your tech partners are likely incentivized by successful rollout at scale. And of course, the site owners are incentivized by basically the cumulative value that's generated for their particular site. So it's really about striking a balance. And the incentive structure really ties both the use case selection as well as the tech sequencing, right? So for instance, you want to prioritize use cases that are feasible with high potential at locations, with high site engagement. You don't necessarily want to go to a place where people are busy or they just don't have time for this because you would have invested all this time and energy into a place that's not going to generate your value, which kind of detracts from your momentum, ideally only just temporarily, right? But, at its worst, it could shut down the whole program. And again, this really helps determine whether to apply more effort, for example, to scaling a single use case to a lot of different sites or kind of doubling down on particular sites and putting a lot of use cases in one. So it's really all about driving kind of whatever the metrics that incentivizes the stakeholders, right? So really overall, there's no silver bullets. It's really about understanding trade-offs and then making informed decisions and progressing the program forward.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think what you've just described is a very simple and practical approach towards de-risking investment in digital twins and then gradually getting that necessary buy-in from the various stakeholders involved to move on to the next use case. So I guess with such an approach, I can see how digital twins could easily become business critical solutions, right? On which value levers such as, say, quantity, efficiency, potentially health and safety as well could rely on. So I guess my next question to you would be more around, how do we sustain momentum, right? And how do we ensure our business continues to reap the benefits of digital twins in the long term?
Yeah, I think the first thing to recognize is that scaling digital twin is really a significant undertaking. You're combining many different disciplines across operations or engineering, IT under a single endeavor, right? We talk about digital twin as a virtual representation of a physical object, but there are attributes of that physical object and data that comes out that is not traditionally kind of part of what, let's say, a technology or IT team is used to, right? So there's a lot of disciplines that needs to be kind of merged together. There's kind of this culture shift that needs to happen, and there's many different topics that we could potentially talk about, right? But to make this a bit more immediate and a bit more concrete, I think the moment where digital twin or digital twin capabilities or applications, Mark, as you put it, becomes business critical. This is where you have to start looking into maintaining services related to connectivity, data, and really intelligence. So from a connectivity services or connectivity in general perspective, it's at minimum, it's really about supporting all the things that you've connected to, all the systems that you've connected to. While in a traditional IT sense, right, it's pretty kind of simple. It's not simple, but it's simpler because it all sits on one side of the organization or the firewall and all that kind of stuff. But the moment you try to make this a bit more physical, you're traversing multiple kind of firewalls. You're traversing different disciplines that, people have been used to a particular way of doing things. And it's really about making them kind of come together and streamline that process to how they best support the physical devices or edge of devices, how they best support new technology that's more traditional IT into the OT environment or into any kind of site environment like a hospital or kind of a retail store. And making sure that whether, it's a new integrated organization or it's a clear delineation or handoff of responsibilities, that is documented and that is well practiced. That really ensures, right, ultimately your systems and devices and data are still connected to kind of pipe in that data that you desperately need to maintain your applications and kind of keep driving that value. Then the second point here is around really data services. As I mentioned before, the moment you have more data streams and the moment you have, different people adding to that mix, you need to really be talking about two things. One is how to rapidly contextualize that information and continuously curate that information. So it is kind of still valuable and it still kind of drives the insights and the necessary kind of inputs to your models and your algorithms and all those things. But secondly, also just as important, how basically you kind of enable the right upscaling for the people to continuously kind of maintain that information so then it's still accurate. And that really is typically what we see as the first hurdle, right? I mentioned the first hurdle is getting across all your IT, OT landscape and making sure it's connected. The second hurdle really is about putting really more of your operational experts into this data domain and making sure that they impart their knowledge on the way you collect your data, contextualize the information and things like that. And then finally, lastly, it's really around, right, intelligence services or kind of the models that you have at hand. As you proliferate some of these, digital twin applications and capabilities, really AI is at the center of it, and make sure maintaining the accuracy of those models and making sure that you know exactly when drift happens and you can remediate that becomes a very important piece of it. And this is even more complex now because, in a typical sense, all this may happen on the cloud, but in a kind of digital twin sense, some of those models may actually happen, very close to the physical asset or on the edge and things like that. So having like a simple or streamlined way to be able to manage, detect, and really kind of remediate any issues in the model lifecycle is really critical here. So I kind of hopefully laid out a few practical, simple things here. Well, maybe not simple, but practical things to look after to kind of really sustain the momentum and to enable kind of the run of such a program.
No, that was very clear, Richard. Thanks for that. I guess you've mentioned a couple of times, those foundational capabilities and those data foundations as well. The intelligence are kind of central towards digital twins. I'm going to try and steer some controversy into this discussion, and I'm going to look at you, Pooja. You lead digital twins within Accenture's Metaverse Continuum Business Group, right? The industrial metaverse is a hot topic there. There's a lot of emphasis on new ways of experiencing digital twins through immersive and these emerging technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality. I guess my question to you, can value be generated without having a robust data foundation?
Quite a controversial question, Mark. But I mean, at the end of the day, it really depends on the use case. And like Richard said, right, what value one is seeking. So, it's really important for us to articulate that value before you embark on an initiative, right? So I agree, like the data is really key, right? But there are applications for which the robustness of the data foundation is not as critical, right? For instance, we've done use cases where it's really about building out a showcase, right? A digital replica created in high fidelity to provide that look and feel of products to end customers, right? or a digital twin of a building or a city to give investors that views. And it does not always require that complex data capture to start with. So one of the examples is we're working with a children's hospital that's currently being constructed, and we're using their CAD models to create the hospital in the metaverse for users to physically experience it, right? Physically experience it and share feedback before it's built. And while we're using the CAD models, it does not really need bringing together any other data or live data fields to really create this immersion as such. Similarly, we've helped Walt Disney create a digital twin of their studio lab. And the purpose of the twin is really to allow their employees to be in a virtual space while not being able to be in the same location, due to lockdown. And we detailed out every aspect of their office. And here, the need was to drive collaboration across teams, have real lifelike interactions, help them emote, read signals, body language, gestures. I mean, as simple as recognizing someone by the way they walk or, why the way their hands move. So we also used it to introduce the studio space, to new folks who joined during shutdown. So they get familiar. And when they do actually come in to the physical location, it creates the sense of belonging, right? So in these examples, experience was really the key, right? Another aspect of using digital twins is to really build out scenarios for training, for studying behavior, to better design facilities, for example. So we helped a client build a digital twin to simulate special incidents or rare hazardous occurrences to be able to train their field engineers. And here it was important to simulate those scenarios in real life-like conditions for workers to be able to get some level of training to be prepared and to be able to respond to such scenarios whose impact was severe. So the key was really to build the preparedness, and a digital replica was really needed for them to be able to successfully handle such situations. Another example is, we're building digital twin of spaces, right, to be able to simulate behavior. For example, a warehouse, to check for, design of the facility, for worker ergonomics, usability, check if they can, reach the shelves to pick up stuff, or if there's enough corridor space for people to walk freely carrying out their tasks. Simulate behavior in emergency situations, right? For instance, if there are about 20 to 25 people in a warehouse and if there is a fire, the behavior can be tested in an immersive environment to see if they can get out safely, right? And what modifications need to be made in the physical space to manage that kind of behavior. And to Richard's point, training and AI is key, and we're using some of these behavioral aspects that are captured, to train the AI models for future, right? So point being, one can start anywhere to build a digital twin across the spectrum. But I think what's key, and I think, Christoph and I actually look at it as an onion. You can start anywhere, but start somewhere where there's immediate value, and then incrementally add all of the other layers to expand and scale.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Pooja. And yeah, I guess through my time implementing digital twins with clients in various industries, a lot of the emphasis so far has been on having simple visualizations, an alert, a KPI, and maybe even a 2D schematic, right? Yes, there were, running complex analytics in the background, but at the end of the day, if say I'm an engineer on the shop floor and I want to know if something's red, amber, or green, I just want to know when it's red so that I can take action, right? But now we start seeing some of these kind of use cases, these low-hanging fruit use cases, they're starting to drive, significant value. And then we're seeing clients kind of move towards these kind of more advanced way, visualizing and interacting with information. So it's in a way the spectrum of experiences is starting to widen. And as you've just explained, Pooja, some are even starting from the other end of the spectrum. As long as there's a clear value case, right, then that's absolutely fine. We can start with the more experiential kind of elements towards digital twins. So I guess a new challenge which I can see arising is related towards the ability to manage this ever-growing number of visual models, right? Engineering 3D models, phototelemetry, laser, LiDAR scans, right? So I guess, Christophe, we talk about managing, data foundations. Yes, clients are becoming more mature when it comes to dealing with, I guess, IT and OT data, right? There's a lot of rigor with those data sets. But when it comes to visual models, let's be honest, sometimes these models just reside on someone's hard disk, right? Which are very poorly managed and with very limited opportunity to maximize model investment. So I guess, how do you see clients managing visual models effectively across the business?
Thanks, Mark. That's a great question, and I think that goes very well to what Pooja and Richard just mentioned too. Is all of this is data models, 3D models or visual models, whether we want to call them our data, but the way we manage them today needs to change. And this, I think, your question is for me at the heart of how digital twin and the wider metaverse is going to grow. 3D model and widely 3D assets in general that include, to your point, LiDAR, photogrammetry, point cloud, are getting core to company growth and ability to generate new value and build digital twin and other experiences like Pooja mentioned. And people starting slowly to realize that they need to put the same level of care and management that they are doing with other core data like IT, OT, like you mentioned. Those model as well need to be, they start to realize that you need to dedicate system, processes, framework inside the enterprise to make sure that those data, those models are managed in the way that they should be. And they cannot necessarily be done in a way that other data are done today. And this separation at the data layer between the 1 and 0 that come from IT and OT and the ones that will come from photogrammetry, LiDAR, point cloud needs to be there. And it needs to be done because, for a simple thing, and you mentioned it too, Mark, that the technology advancement and the cost to acquire and build model is going down very fast. Anyone with any commercial phone today can do an acquisition and create a 3D model. So the number of model is constantly growing. The complexity of the model as well are constantly growing. In size, the fact that, as Pooja mentioned, you can do a complete model of a city or an island, or you can do a high-level definition of a car, a plane that have a lot of polygon and create a very big model. But today, in 90% of our clients, those models, to your point, Mark, are dispersed across the entire enterprise in different SharePoint, C drive, etc. They have been acquired in different formats that not necessarily compatible, or people don't look at making them compatible to leverage them to build that point. And to what Richard was saying, we need those data, we need them to be qualified, but to the point as well of Pooja, they already have in all of the enterprise acquired over the year CAD drawing, BIM, photogrammetry, LiDAR that are laying there and that potentially could be used straight away to build digital twin and other experiences, and then enhance, enrich with more complex data, and to be able to run simulation and other experiences on top. One of the things for me that I really see, Mark, and I see that as an accelerator is, as well, people start to realize that models or 3D models will be shared across multiple experiences. And as Pooja mentioned, we call this onion because it's different layer, but ultimately it's part of the same element, is that today, and I think one of the examples of Richard was very clear, but if you take today a company that invests in building a digital twin, you will imagine that the model and the information that came in to build a digital twin should be reused to create the immersive and training experience that Pooja mentioned, but as well the same models. And when I say model, I talk about visual models that could be reused to create a connected worker experience to do maintenance execution or repair or etc. And what is important, and as well you mentioned it, and Richard mentioned it too in the sustain, is that digital twin industrial metaverse experience are only true and valid if they keep following what's happening in the real world, in the physical world. And all of the physical work, be it a plant, a city, whatever else, evolving, change, transform. And if your digital twin and your digital replica are not able to follow in real time those changes, well, people will not trust it. People will not get into it and use it because they don't have that. So what should happen is that when your physical model is changing and you're doing a modification of that model, the ability of the system and the landscape and the infrastructure should be able to say, oh, I will change that particular part in my digital twin. I will change it in my immersive training. I will change it in that. So you keep it evergreen and you keep creating an environment that is the people see as truth and is evolving and is permissive over time. The last point as well for me, Mark, that I wanted to mention when you talk about those 3D visual model is really that model is now the currency or key part of what you're going to do about collaboration and sharing. And I know we're going to talk about it a little bit more later on, but for me, the key part of that is that model now will be used and translated and reused across several things by several parties. So you could have a third party that going to give a set of models that come with a physical asset to a company A that will add some knowledge into it and enhance that model to be able to be reused by company B or C. And by managing this the model life cycle, the 3D model life cycle, and the ownership of the IP and who owns the intelligence on it, then you will see as well that will create a multiple set of value. So just to conclude on your question, for me is that like many years ago when the journey started around the advanced analytic and using AI and putting all of the data in data lake and make the data in those data lake available and comment and create value. We are in the same place with the visual model and the 3D model. We need to put them in this model lake, make them available, combine them to create experiences, and then the intelligence, back to Richard, is to connect those data from the data lake with a model lake and put them together and create more intelligence, more experiences on top that will be able to be shared and multiply across the industry. So I hope that answers your question, Mark.
It does a lot. And Christoph, I guess we talk at Accenture about this continuum, right? The metaverse continuum, and to me it's got many different meanings. First of all, yes, it's a continuum of existing technologies like AR and VR and 5G and AI and IoT kind of coming together to create the new kind of, an evolved, new internet, right? I can see continuum being referred to as a continuation of the physical world into a digital world experience as well, right? And then there's another continuum of, between digital twins, right, across different value chains, so from design all the way into build and construction, and then all the way to operate, and to enable all of these different, continuums, for to say, right? Our models, and our data need to be set up in a way that enables this kind of seamless continuation through experience. So that's fantastic. I guess, Mike, I'll look to you next. We're talking about this kind of life cycle, right? I see a huge opportunities with digital twins and the ability to break silos across, the product life cycle and across supply chain. And it's easy for businesses to fall into past mistakes where they kickstart these highly innovative, I guess, call them skunk work projects, across the business, resulting in multiple disconnected digital twins, which, despite adding value in their respective parts of the business, they fail to bring that kind of multiplier effect. So what are some of the key cross-value chain client problems that you're seeing, and what does the role of high fidelity digital twins play?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's a great question, and I really appreciate the comments I think Christoph was making about continuum, and some of the stuff, Puya, you said about scenarios are especially relevant there. At NVIDIA, we're spending a lot of time specifically in the automotive industry and looking at OEMs and tier one, and really kind of focused on the greenfield factory initiatives, right? So even outside of automotive, we see there's about $1 trillion that's going to be invested between semiconductor, new EV plants, and battery production. And so if we just kind of focus in on on this area, it actually gives a good opportunity to start looking at how companies are moving away from this thing you mentioned, Mark, about previous data silos. Because when you're building a new plant, you have an opportunity to rethink your automation processes. You have an opportunity to rethink your data structure, your internal teams. And so we're really trying to focus there. And what we see is that the problem with building a new factory is it's currently impossible to test and optimize that factory until it's physically built. Right? So it gives us a really good microcosm of all of the things that you need a digital twin for. And the reason that problem exists is because getting new factories running smoothly, it can take months of optimization, and it can only start when the factory is physically built. The software and tools, the data systems that go into developing these new facilities. We talk to automotive OEMs who have 7 to 11 different IT systems. These are just PLM systems, PDM systems that are managing different data. So in reality, what happens is the majority of the problem solving actually takes place on site by tradespeople who are installing equipment and finding clashes and collisions then. So if you boil it down, like the real problems, kind of the first order problems are fairly simple, right? Is there enough room for the equipment in the space? Is there enough room for a worker to move safely through the space? Is there enough safety area for my robot to operate? Is there enough room to replace that robot when I need to? We kind of feel like moving to the cloud, moving to these aggregated digital twin models, and especially having a philosophy of openness, of collaboration, and really this initiative of digitalization, which I think, Richard, you touched on really well, is going to be what kind of helps us turn that corner. Right, and not saying that brownfield and existing sites can't transform away from some of these silos, but what we see is the companies that have been, building cars, planes, and trucks for the last 35, 40 years, they're using a lot of the systems and the software that was architected 30, 45 years ago. When companies, not out of bad intention, but just out of necessity, they couldn't transport file formats even within their own tool set, much less within the tool set of another company. And that's permitted them to build businesses that are kind of like walled gardens, right? That are now predicated on keeping everything within your domain or your file format, or it's all my solution. And the market's demanding openness. Right, the market is demanding the ability to transfer data between systems and work with companies like Accenture to knit together these disconnected these systems. And so we really feel like what's happening and what we're hearing from the market is we need to aggregate data. We need to connect our systems. So we're not going to stop using these highly specialized tools that we've used for the last 10, 15, 20 years, but we need to make the process of designing, of developing a factory, whatever it is, a complex facility, it needs to become more like a e-sport or more like a video game, right? Where 10, 15 planners and engineers can actually get into the 3D model, can see a 3D model that's immersive, that's rich, but that's also overlaid with intelligence coming off of the shop floor. Richard, you spoke about that really well, right? Of edge devices and data that's giving you real-time insights about possible maintenance issues or worker safety issues, or the many, many things that the data that's streaming off of our factory floors and our facilities can help humans and then AI agents make better decisions. So I think what we've got in the market is a really quick shift away from these traditional methods of kind of doing everything compartmentalized, like you say, Mark, like skunk works, right? Everybody wanted these innovation projects. They saw the vision, right? The vision that Accenture and other companies have put out there, and they've tried and they've kind of gotten part of the way up the mountain, but now that mountain's starting to flatten off. And I think there's a number of things that are doing that. It's cloud, it's the ability to produce these massive models at scale and high performance, connecting these other systems, and ultimately just doing it in an open way, right? Of not trying to like hoard everything into my data format, but open it up and connect it. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but that's kind of what we see is going on.
No, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I guess you spoke about capital projects, right? I mean, let's face it, right? We can't afford using the conventional ways, right, of working that we have been using for the past couple of years. Let's I guess in capital projects, like nothing has really changed in the last 50 years, but now we're seeing huge amounts of demands in to speed up, say, our net zero, targets that everyone's making, right? We need to go and build new renewable generation. We need to build transmission lines. We need to build EV factories. We need to build gigafactories, right? And we can't do that with the old ways, right? We need that openness that you've mentioned, Mike, right? And we need that element of collaboration as well, and people coming together. So I guess this kind of is a really nice segue into the next section of our discussion. And I want to bring a great example of digital twin collaboration from a recent demo that Accenture developed that integrates NVIDIA Omniverse with Microsoft Teams to enable real-time 3D collaboration. So this is running on Omniverse Cloud in Microsoft Azure, and it's leveraging Teams meeting featuring live share. And this Accenture demo showcases how we can shorten this time between decision-making, action, and feedback. So let's take a look at that, and then we'll come back to the final part of this talk.
At Accenture, we want to shorten the time between decision-making, action, and feedback, both for our teams and clients. To make meetings a place where real work happens, we're harnessing the power of NVIDIA Omniverse, a platform for building and operating industrial metaverse applications via the accessibility and ease of Microsoft collaboration tools. It's still early days, but we want to share what we've been working on. So here we are in a meeting with two of our designers. Hi, Kennedy. Hi, Nat.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
So let's imagine we're in a collaborative design session, working with a client to build a digital twin of their warehouse. But I don't have Omniverse on my local machine. So while I could ask Nat or Kennedy to share their screens, we can instead connect to Omniverse running in the cloud as a direct integration with Microsoft Teams. Through the Omniverse Teams app, we leverage NVIDIA OVX servers in the cloud, so each of us can view and edit our single source of truth warehouse model right here in real time. Connected to Omniverse Presenter mode, we can each independently move around the warehouse as we like. So I see some annotations here from a previous team.
Yeah, Emma, it looks like they're asking for an additional station. I'll add that now.
I can also switch into composing mode and work alongside Kennedy in real time. Kennedy, let's put the additional station over here.
Ooh, I like that. Give me a second. I'll add the rest of the conveyor belt track.
So while Kennedy is working here, I can move independently to work with Nat. Nat, are there any structural impacts we need to think about?
I've been watching. It looks like that new station may impede our fire escape. I'm going to move that door right over here.
We've gotten a lot done on this call, but we've also got other stakeholders to involve. So I'm going to add a note for our other work streams. And since this is all connected to Teams, in the future, those annotations could become tasks or emails or calendar invites. All right, thanks for your help, Nat and Kennedy.
See ya.
That was just a quick demonstration of where we are today, but we're excited to continue working with NVIDIA and Microsoft to bring 3D collaboration to everyone.
Okay, that was super fantastic, right? I mean, it's so exciting to see that coming together, and it's such a simple way of getting things done in meetings. And I guess it kind of proves your point that you've mentioned, Mike, earlier, right? We need to be open, we need to be able to collaborate, together and do things differently. And this is just kind of one of the examples of how we can do that. And of course, it is also the start of a new journey between Accenture and NVIDIA, which we're all very excited about. I guess let's talk a bit more about the immersive collaborative nature, right? And Pooja, I guess what does this immersive collaborative nature of digital twins drive?
Yeah, first, I love that video. I think it's exciting, and it's really a great sneak peek, right, into the art of possible. And I think in the immersive collaboration, what it allows, is really to bring together people without spatial or physical constraints, location constraints. And it lets you experience and interact in physical spaces. Like I can pick up a product, I can look at a machine, I can do things today virtually, which are not flat, right? And it goes a step further because it's providing an ability to visualize abstract and often dense ideas, such as complex data analysis. You can do it together in an intuitive manner, right? In a physical manner, shared, and really driving that collaboration, right? Like just looking at data in a silo, right, is doesn't really bring out the value. But if we could all together, like just all of us on a call, if we're in person, right, we're looking at data together, the level of collaboration is significantly more, right? So I think that is the one key thing. And we're seeing a lot of the benefits of that. So one of the benefits is it removes delays, right? Or it compresses the timelines. You can bring together your design and engineering functions together. You can bring your design, manufacturing, and end users together. It's shortening and bringing these today siloed functions together for that end-to-end view, like Mike also mentioned, right? So one of the things is how you can bring together your internal multifunctional teams, but also interestingly, through these collaborative spaces, bring in external parties and stakeholders like your suppliers, your logistics providers, and so on. We're interestingly working with a manufacturing client where we're building a blockchain-based solution to review and control various manufacturing parameters of their suppliers and subcontractors, really, to ensure that right parameters and settings are used to produce products to ensure quality, a good quality of the end product. So this can be further enhanced by adding in this immersive layer, right? Similar to the video, if we can enable remotely located participants to actually see the representation of the manufacturing process and understand the importance of the parameters on the quality of the end product, it makes a lot more and drives a lot more value, right? And similar to you brought about capital projects, construction, right? As you look at construction of linear assets, when you're planning and designing them, typically today you have traditional surveyors going, traveling, giving you the route, identifying potential obstructions like rocky areas, trees, things like that, right? And it's provided to you in a report, right? Which is time consuming because you have to go through it and it's very, very unintuitive, right? Now with immersive collaboration, we can overlay, our plans with this external GIS terrain data. And importantly, you can bring your stakeholders together. You can bring your planners, designers, engineers, really together, study the impact, collaborate to evaluate options, and really solve for those obstructions in a much more effective manner, right? And save time and cost. And interestingly, eliminate the issues that typically come up much later in the process, such as, communication gaps, oversights, etc. Right? And lastly, I think, further immersive spaces allow executives to jump. And I know we've talked a lot about this and we're driving a lot of this for our clients. And as we kind of function within Accenture is how you can jump from the boardroom to the manufacturing plant or to the warehouse, right? To walk the floors, to understand ground level challenges in an immersive manner without having to travel across the globe, right? And what it does is it builds these deeper connections, and you're really getting the true perspective to effectively solve problems, right? And this is the game changing aspects of this, right? You can have employees visiting digital twins of companies across the globe. You can connect with your counterparts across the world, socialize, share interests, insights, best practices, and really you're dissolving the boundaries to really create a truly connected enterprise, right? So I mean, Mark, the possibilities are endless, and the collaborative nature that metaverse really brings, the way I describe it is it really helps you bend time and space to drive new value, across.
That's awesome. I
yeah.
love that bends time and space. That's so great. So perfect.
Yeah.
Superpowers, right?
Yeah. And we're seeing that across the board, right? I think that is the key differentiator that the metaverse brings.
Yeah, that idea of dissolving boundaries, right? Yeah, it's really cool.
And what I like also is this kind of concept of kind of being able to kind of fail multiple times in a completely safe environment in a virtual world, right? If you had to fail in the real world, that would be costly, right? And you can't afford to do that, right? But you can afford to do that in a virtual space, multiple times, one after each other, until you get it right, and then take that to the real world, right? Once you've actually proven it in the virtual world.
Yeah.
So I mean, go ahead.
And you really stop looking, like what I really think is the biggest value is you stop looking at every function in a silo, right? This enables you, like we talked about, right, interconnecting the data, looking at the true end-to-end, so you're driving outcomes across the entire value chain versus just in a silo, right? And that really then exponentially increases the value that you can drive using these technologies.
Exactly. No, thank you very much. I mean, it's been an amazing pleasure kind of having you all today here. We've covered quite a lot. We've jumped through a number of different topics. Kind of, Richard, you've helped us understand more about kind of having those right foundations for digital twins, and then gradually build more as more complexities as those use cases evolve, and the way we can sustain those investments. Pooja, thanks. You've helped us really understand how we can build, how we can start and build digital twins from, I guess, the other side of the spectrum, focusing more initially on the visual aspect, where we can still drive significant value, and then gradually kind of bring in new data sets and intelligence to make those digital twins even more intelligent. You've shared some fantastic insight on the immersive, collaborative nature of digital twins, and how that is encouraging us to come together and break those physical silos and enable more social and emotional experiences. Of course, Christoph, you've helped us understand some of the new challenges which our clients are facing when it comes to the ever-growing number of visual models, and how businesses can manage them better to serve multiple purposes and maximize those model investments. And then finally, Mike, you've helped us kind of understand that multiplier effect, I would say, through extending those digital twins across the value chain. And this is going to help us enable us to see things not as discrete entities kind of working independently, but rather kind of a system of systems, right, that support each other in order to solve some of our biggest challenges. So I encourage all our listeners to post your comments and suggestions, and of course, feel free to reach out to us for any follow-ups you'd like to have. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone. Thank you very much for being here, and truly appreciate you finding the time for this discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks. Have a great GTC.
Great being here. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.